Welcome to Yerba Mate Talks.
Hello, as Max would say, welcome, welcome. I am Dr. J, and I don't have a cat, but I am glad you're here. We're today going to talk about changing our mind. I read the next chapter in our book, and I want to review it, and I thought the chapter was really, really interesting, though a little bit of a bummer as far as the efficacy of arguing. Whodunit says, hope your early meetings was like all the other ones, useless and should have been an email. I'm not sure what meeting you're talking about, but of course I do have meetings, and I had one today, and uh, I don't think it could have been an email, and it was a short meeting, so it was worthwhile. First Amender, sick, a stream at 1 p.m. Yeah, I try to do every Thursday at this time. Obviously, sometimes I can't do this time because of work or whatnot, or I'm traveling, but I try to do Thursdays at noon Central, and we talk about changing our mind. If anybody wants to join the stream, I put the link in the chat. You're welcome. And sometimes when people join, they try to change my mind about something. Maybe they heard me debate something or discuss something or argue something, and they want to change my mind about it. And uh, sometimes we just talk about the book or the chapter, and we talk about changing minds. So you're welcome to join the stream, and we can kind of chit chat about it. Max had one this morning. Gotcha. I got you. I don't know if Max will join us today. Issa said he might be able to jump on today. He had something he wanted to chit chat about, so that'd be great if he'll be able to show that. That's right. Sherba Mate isn't always Max. It usually is. Max is our, of course, most faithful, most dedicated, most consistent guy there. So certainly associate Sherba Mate with Max. But from time to time, Issa and I do kind of do our own streams. Thursdays, of course, is my big day. But today we are going to be chit chatting about the book How Minds Change. We're in chapter 7 called Arguing, which of course, in my opinion, is a great chapter to be discussing for Sherba Mate Talks, because what do we do a lot here? What are a decent percentage of our streams? We review debates. We review times where people get together and argue, and we talk about those. And of course, not review, I should say after shows. Yes, sometimes we do reviews as well, but we do after shows. But before we jump into the book, looks like Brandon wants to come on. Hello, Brandon. Welcome.
Hello. How am I? Y'all can see me and everything?
We all can see you, Brandon. What can I do for you? Do you have something you wanted to chat about?
No, it sounds like you're about to start reading a book, so
Yes, I'm
I
going
just
to.
came here for that.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and start reviewing the book. So I'll pop you off here, and I'll go ahead and start doing that. All right. So the chapter is called Arguing, and what are we arguing about here, or what is this talking about regarding arguing? Well, the author, based on another guy's arguments named Hugo, argues that the reason we developed the ability to argue wasn't really because we were finding the truth. So when we review debates, when we talk about modern day debate, when we see doing the after show, when we participate in debates, I think we are often thinking to ourselves, we're trying to find the truth. That's what that's the right answer, right? Like, what would we say? We're trying to find the truth. I think maybe some of us are a little more realistic, and if you're a little more on the nihilist side, you might say something like, we do debates for fun, So that's another reason we might do debates, right? Just to have a good time, just to enjoy the back and forth. Sometimes people enjoy it for the train wreck. I hate the train wreck part of it particularly, or maybe not in every case, but for the most part, I hate just kind of yelling at each other. Um, but are we really just doing it to have fun? Are we really like actually seeking the truth? And this author's arguing we're not really trying to seek the truth. You go, okay, so why did we develop this arguing? He thinks that humans tend to argue, or why we developed this ability to argue wasn't to find the truth. It was to gain consensus. It is just like a social function that we have in order to be able to like work together. I remember one of my brothers told me one time, he said, the reason people watch Fox News, I think he was watching Fox News because the people he was around at the time, were Fox News watcher. He goes, the people who watch Fox News don't watch Fox News to find the truth. They watch Fox News to know what they're supposed to believe. Well, that sounds terrible. Why would someone just watch the news to find out what they're supposed to believe? Well, what he meant, I think part of what he meant by that wasn't so much they're like, oh, we don't want to think, we just want to be told what to believe. What what you want to do is find out what your social group believes, find out what the right answers are, and then you roll with it. And so basically he's saying what arguing is doing is trying to get together to come up with social cohesion. You're not actually arguing to find the truth. And when you watch modern day debates or other debate platforms, it does seem like it does make some sense that you're like, well, which of these people's on my team? Okay, they're on my team. What are they saying? Are they giving me all the cues of the things that I know that they should say? Yep, they're saying this. Yep, boom, they're one of mine. They're on my team. And so, isn't it a little bit depressing that if it's true that the reason we argue is for social cohesion and not the truth, arguing might not be super useful at all. Oh man, that would be, or not useful for what we think it is. It's useful for social cohesion. It would be super annoying if we're finding out that if it's not particularly useful in changing our mind and finding out new truth. The bearded doctor says we all have confirmation bias. It is so much easier to spend time with those that already agree with us. Yeah, it is easy to spend time, and I would even argue it can be hard to spend time with other people because you only spend time with so many people. I think I talked about this last time. I mean, you only can have so many people you spend quite a time with, and to find one that disagrees with you a lot and then spend a lot of time with them actually can be a little bit challenging, a little bit difficult, even if you want to. So he's arguing the evolutionary purpose of this whole arguing thing isn't having anything to do with finding the truth. The goal of the arguing is to have social cohesion. So next thing he kind of talks about is why facts aren't sufficient. And so I've heard this concept before, and it's really kind of a bummer. And the idea is the smarter you are, the more educated you are, the more things you know, the more facts you have, the more data you put in your brain. You might think, well, this means you're going to be able to find the truth better. But you know what often happens to those of us that are the smartest? We're not actually good if we don't use all that smarts and all that data and all that sharp tongue ability that we may have to find the truth. We use it to justify our own position. We just get really, really good at justifying what we already believe. So that means simply piling on evidence or arguments fails to change our minds because we're really good at twisting and turning and making those things fit. And from my background, I can tell you one of those situations where it can happen is theology. So theologians don't agree, right? So there's all kinds of different belief systems about the Bible. There's Baptists and Catholics and Lutherans and Methodists and so on and so forth. And sometimes it seems like um, you would be able to figure out why people disagree on all this theology stuff. But what it does seem to do is people have a belief system and they have to adapt their theology to new information, but they want to like sort of keep their group intact. And so you end up sort of twisting in all of these different theologies. It's very, very interesting. Unfortunately, that seems like the way that one of the functions of theologians is sort of continue to justify maybe theologies that aren't correct. Because obviously, some theologians are wrong, or most theologians are wrong, or heck, maybe all of them are wrong. But they always figure out a way to be able to justify everything. We got a quote from the bearded doctor: "The more I know, the more I realize I know nothing." That's true. There is a sense in which I did learn a lot about a certain subject and I realized I didn't know anything, but um, sometimes the group dynamic I think grabs us all, and I probably don't even know all the time when I'm being grabbed by the group think, by the trying to become part of the social cohesion, and I just go with it. Next, a thing. So, okay, facts alone aren't insufficient. Sometimes the smarter we are, we use the facts to um, be able to just justify our position. We don't actually use the facts to learn anything new or change our mind. We just get good at arguing for our side. The next is the distinction between winning and learning. So, who wins a debate? If you watch an MDD debate, the person that we often think of winning isn't a person that would like concede anything, right? In an MDD debate, the winner isn't the one that learned something new, that came into the situation and came out smarter. Nope. The winner, we usually say, is the person who had good rhetoric, or the person that had a sharp tongue, the person that had a lot of facts, the person that had a lot of facts on the tip of their tongue. So, for example, I'm sure there's been debates that you've watched, if you know who Witsit is, that you're like, oh yeah, Witsit, if you watch this and you didn't know anything, Witsit may have won this debate. Well, did Witsit learn anything during that debate? Was Witsit trying to learn anything? I mean, I kind of doubt it, right? So therefore, when we jump into argument situations, we are usually not jumping in those to learn anything new. We are jumping in those situations to um, uh, demonstrate that we're right, and often we're using it for a social situation. If you want to jump on, I'm probably about done. I think I just got a few more points in this chapter. If there's anything you want to jump on, talk to me about, argue about, put the link in the chat there. You're welcome to. Hey, Robin, it's doubting something, probably something else said. Good to see you here today. Glad to have you on and with us today. So, the distinction between winning and learning. We are often there in a debate, in an arguing situation, because we're trying to win, not because we're trying to learn. And I'm sure that's true. That's probably not hard to believe. So, what are the situations in which you could argue that you could use this argument thing that maybe is more suited for group cohesion rather than changing our mind and learning things? When could we use this arguing as a way to um, learn something new, to change our minds, rather than just get into the group thing, rather than just jump on the confirmation bias? How can we do it? Well, we have to be open to change. And boy, that's obvious, easy to say. Some ways I think that's a throwaway line because we all know it's true, but it's one of those things that preachers might say, easy to say, hard to do, right? Easy to say, hard to do. Oh, Robin says, I doubt Witsit learned anything. Witsit has gotten good at talking. I mean, he's quick on his feet and he can say a lot of things. And but the more I learned about the flat Earth stuff and learned about the arguments, it didn't seem like he learned a lot about physics or anything like that. The next thing I think is important for the context of this discussion that I'm having and the way I'm leading the discussion is the environment must allow for good faith reasoning rather than adversarial shouting. So this argument is if we're going to have an argument, it has to be a situation where we know it's good faith, that we're just not yelling at each other, but it's like this. I hate to use the word safe space, but it's like this good environment to be able to have an argument. And what are good environments to have an argument? Well, if you're in a situation where your audience wants a train wreck, wants the yelling, wants the smackdown, what are you going to provide? You're going to provide a smackdown. So therefore, a lot of debate channels, a lot of debate stuff are just completely garbage environments for people to learn very much. Maybe there's someone watching who watches the argument and hears some fact they haven't heard before and changes their mind. But certainly the debaters themselves, the environment is absolutely horrible that they would change their mind about anything. The good faith isn't there. Everyone's just trying to remember facts and rhetorical tricks that they are, that they know in order to be able to use to be able to win the debate. And so I don't think there's a lot of situations where there's a lot of good faith reasoning. And you say, well, what are those situations? Well, I mean, the author didn't say this, but I'm wondering, do in order to be able to debate and have a situation where you're into learning, do you need it to be more of a private situation? Is the fact that it's a public debate just make the environment toxic like instantly? I don't know. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. Debatable D. If debate is facilitated discussion, then we can't have debates about broad topics like is evolution true? The debate should be given. Oh yeah, if you're talking about debate topics on MDD and other channels, yes, they that's just a YouTube algorithm thing, right? They just have to try to be able to make the show something interesting as far title wise in order to be able to try to get people to um, watch the show and click on it the first time. I I try to be empathetic to the fact that they have to do that, but that's probably just the situation that they're in to be able to get people to watch. Problem with MD is entertainment, not debate, not for learning. You know, I've never talked to James about it or heard James publicly talk about this, but it wouldn't shock me if he just privately would say MDD is for fun. It's interesting. People like to watch debates. I'm not trying to set it up to be a learning situation. So I've never heard him speak about it. Maybe someone else has heard him talk. I don't, sometimes he does chat after the debates and says this stuff. I don't often watch that, but maybe he would even lean into that. But I agree, channels, MDD isn't the only one. Any other debates you've seen just don't seem to be good environments to have a changing their mind. Robin says, if you're having a discussion with a person who refuses to admit they could be wrong, you're wasting your time. That is true. Um, yeah, you have to be willing to admit that you could be wrong. And one thing about debates that maybe could make them better, though it would make them really long, and this isn't really probably super realistic, is you'd actually have like a series of debates where the two debaters are allowed to like look at information like in between and refine their arguments and re-go over stuff. And if someone brings up a study or a piece of information, that could be really interesting. I watched like a 20-hour debate about the origins of COVID that was they had $100,000 on the line. I'm sure I talked about it before. And they that was really interesting because there was time in between for evaluations to be made. And I realized it was a different a subject each time they came back, but it did seem to give them the ability to kind of reevaluate things and research if they would have wanted to. The logo's clipped by your video layer. Yeah, I know. I've noticed that too. I'm maybe I need to talk to Max about my OBS skills there. Jerry Springer created this environment. People love a dumpster fire. Yeah, Jerry was the king of the dumpster fire. I I don't were those real people? I mean, I got really suspicious after a while. Not that I watched too much Jerry Springer, but you'd see ads or whatever. Like, are these real people? Are these actors? This seems a little bit out of control. Um, oh yeah, debatable. If they present it as entertainment, no problem. Maybe they don't. Maybe they do. I mean, I guess it's supposed to more presented as like it's usually presented as like, hey, we just have free flowing, the least moderation as possible. We just let people talk. They don't say it's entertainment, but I look at it that way for the most part. Robin Webster, exactly. That's why debating objective fact makes no sense. Debating around or the consequences of those acts is far more interesting. It's what happens a lot at scientific symposiums. Okay, so talking about the conditions under which arguing can lead to change. Speaking of which, if there's somebody that wants to jump on the stream, come on and we'll discuss. We can argue and talk about changing our minds. So, final thing as far as me summarizing the book is conditions under which arguing some practical implications. When you seek to persuade someone, you might not want to go with a competitive, combative style. You more want to go with cooperative inquiry. It's underlying beliefs, why they believe what they believe, not just rebutting their points. I've tried to do this, but I just move away from it so quickly into point rebutting. So I don't know if you've guys ever heard me and Max debate communism too much. And usually the part we talk about is I just cannot see doing things without money. Like, I just don't know how you allocate resources without money. It's like, who wants to be a roofer? Like, not very many people, but you need a lot of roofers. And how do you motivate someone to become a roofer? Well, I don't know how to do it without something like money. If everybody just gets what they need as far as the government making it or whatever, and we all have jobs and we all just do the jobs that we like and no one chooses being a roofer, it's going to be a real problem. So anyway, I just don't see how we motivate without money. For example, the job that I do, I do work in IT now. Um, I enjoy it. I like it. I think it's a pretty cool job, but I wouldn't pick it like just like no, this is this is I would be like a NBA basketball coach, of which there's like 32 of those, or something like that, right? So I don't quite understand. So anyway, sometimes when Max and I talk about this, I feel like I start out doing a decent job of trying to ask Max like inquisitive like questions. I like inquire, um, hey, how would this money thing work? How would you do this and how would you do this? And I feel like I transition into debate pretty quickly, and I go into the sort of debate mode pretty quickly. But we have the bearded doctor here. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. Anything particular like to discuss or argue about, or something that tickled your fancy that you wanted to talk about?
No, I love the topic of debate. I think it's fascinating to see how people do and don't debate. I think that's something I'd mentioned in the comments. One of my favorite older debates was William Lane Craig and Peter Atkins when they first did a debate on the existence of God, and Dr. Craig came up with all of these points that he issued, and Dr. Atkins, his only response was, "No, you don't. No, it's not." I mean, zero give, zero opportunity to share. And whenever he was presented with a view that was contrary to his, you could see it made him mad. I mean, physically, his demeanor changed. And I think that's one of the interesting things about debate is that when we're challenged our preconceived notions are challenged, we tend to get angry as opposed to inquisitive. And I just find that fascinating.
Do you think the public nature of those things makes it even worse in the sense that maybe those people could have been a little bit more inquisitive, but I assume if you watch this, they were probably like back then, they're probably on a stage or something, and had an in-person audience in the whole 9 yards, I suppose.
Absolutely. I think it's probably embarrassing if you're on stage and someone's challenging you, especially if you are in an academia like those two gentlemen are, and to have someone, in a normal setting as a professor, you're just that's it. You are the go-to, and people don't argue with you in class. You just share the truth or your truth or whatever your
Mhm.
position, and there's no back and forth. This is what is in my classroom, and if you don't like it, get out. But in a debate setting, you can't do that.
Yeah, yeah. And I bet you there's like a lot of complications. Like, what if you thought what the other person was saying was like bad for the world or something?
Yeah.
Then you would get mad, right? Like it wouldn't be like a one-on-one where if you and I are talking one-on-one and no one else is listening and maybe I'm spouting just, ideas that you think are just atrocious, like whatever, pick some bad thing. It would probably be hard for you not to get mad in a public setting because you'd be like, well, look, Dr. J is like, spewing all this stuff and harming the world by doing this. But if we were one on one, while you would find it frustrating or annoying, or you might be upset, I would imagine you wouldn't be upset to a different degree if it were a private situation than you felt like I was, disseminating this to the world or whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I think that and the fact that when you're in that public setting format, because there's already a pre-designated, you get X number of minutes, to present your cause, and so people are tend they I feel like they tend to be more in the process of what am I going to present, not does this other person's view make sense? And so
Mm.
they're not open to that back and forth. They're open to, I got to get as much of my information out there in my 5 minutes as I can, and then rebut their information, not engage in it. So yeah, to your point, I think sitting down one on one, having a conversation where you can go, well, okay, well, what do you mean by that? Or let's unpack that a little bit more. I found to be fascinating. I've got a lot of friends who are atheists, and some of my favorite people do not believe the way I do, and those are my favorite people to sit down and talk to, because I love, I'm like, okay, let's get our brains real gushy and let's unpack this idea and see what why do you believe what you believe, uh, in that matters.
And have you had any success changing other people's minds, or have they had any success changing yours, or have you noticed
Oh
that?
yeah,
Or
yeah, both. I think because one of my favorite statements that I learned early on was, we can't all be wrong, but or we can't all be right, but we could all be wrong.
Mhm.
And so I'm the first to admit if someone comes, I think it was Anthony Flew, Dr. Flew, who said, follow the evidence where it leads. And Flew was a notorious. There's actually a book called "There Is No God: How the World's Most Notorious Atheist Changed His Mind." And it was because post debate with Dr. Gary Habermas, in conversation, the two of them they sat down and had a bunch of conversations, that Habermas was able to talk to him one on one and have those conversations. And so, in that capacity, I watched in reading that book. It was really interesting to see his view change. Personally, I've done the same thing. One of my really good friends, he's probably my best friend, is an atheist, and he and I have started off. He was, staunch atheist, and I was too at one point in my life. I was, and I chose to study all the different religions and viewpoints and perspectives, and came to a belief in God and Christianity. But he and I have had a lot of those conversations where we're just like, okay, let's unpack why you have a doubt in X, and what is it that's causing that doubt in X, and then let's not, I'm not going to get mad at you because of your belief, and because you feel a certain way. And I think that's where we kind of miss the boat. He's told me that so many times he's talked to other believers and they just get frustrated, and then the conversation's over. And I'm like, no. I was like, this is to me, it's fascinating to hear how people's brains work, and to just kind of deep dive into the cognitive recesses of our mind, of why people believe the way they do. The epistemology of that is just fascinating.
Sure. Have you heard some of my other chapters reviewing of this book, or not too many of them?
This is my first.
Yeah, so this book actually, earlier chapters, one of the really interesting things about it, I'm interested to hear your take, is it argues, and I would tend to agree, that a lot of the times why we change our mind is actually has significantly to do with more the emotional elements than it
Mm,
does actual facts. Meaning, like, if you grow up in a Christian home and everybody in your world is a Christian, your emotions, your family atmosphere, your everything is going to hold you there. Really, really, like, to switch from Christian to Muslim or Hindu is going to be incredibly hard, and it has nothing to do with the facts. You could go read this or the Quran, or go read this or read that, and you say, well, what would be holding you there? It would not be have anything to do with any facts about anything. It would all have to do with emotional thing. And so one of the examples of the book is Westboro Baptist Church. So Westboro
mm,
Baptist Church, there's a few people that have left that, and the reason they left wasn't because they read the Bible and realized their beliefs weren't correct. That almost didn't have anything to do with it. It was because, like, one guy was going to be a doctor and they wouldn't let him be a doctor, and then he became like socially shamed for it or whatever. It was like it's because the emotional aspect of the group dynamics were like bad for him, that
mm,
and then maybe he meets someone that's really nice that he disagrees with, and then suddenly he's open to it. But it was not because he studied the Bible and listened to a sermon and thought, boy, this isn't the way to go, right? And so it does seem like as humans we are changing our minds has a ton to do with emotional aspects, and, sadly not that much as far as just pure rational argument. And this chapter goes along with a little bit, right? Specifically talking about arguing, but kind of talking about, well, it's, arguing is used for group cohesion. It's the point of it isn't to find the truth; it's to group cohesion. And then, of course, we have the right situation and all that. So anyway, what do you think about that? I have definitely noticed that. I mean, you have to account somehow that everyone that's born a Muslim stays a Muslim most of the time. Very rarely
mm.
do they switch, right? And as goes for most religions. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen both. I tend to, to think that what you're saying there is probably more true than not. Um, a great example. I used to live in Austin, and my next door neighbor was a lawyer, and he was an angry atheist lawyer. And one of our favorite things to do was to sit and just talk and have these conversations. And our neighborhood was really unique because so we had our house here. On one side was my atheist lawyer friend. The one house down from there was a new age spiritualist. She was super into hula hoops and, like, all these things. Across the
Hula
street was
hoops,
an
the
old.
things that you do around your waist.
Yeah, they
Okay.
used it in some sort of metaphysical a connection to the Brahma, and I was like, all right, I mean, it was Austin, so keep it weird was for sure the way to go. But then across the street was an older gay couple. They'd been married for decades, and then there next to them was a single mom Catholic, and then another house over was a guy who he was a producer for all these documentaries on TLC. And then next to me on the other side was they were former Mormons. Anyways, all that to be said, and I'm a Christian. We had a ridiculously wide range of belief systems, but one of our favorite things to do was to get out there and just talk. And in one of my conversations with Kirk, the lawyer, I remember he and I were sitting there, and he was like, "You can't really believe in this mystical sky daddy, Come on, man." He's like, "That's just dumb. That's just foolishness." And as we began to talk, my first question was, what is it that causes you not to believe this? And anyways, long story short, we go through all these conversations, and I finally asked him, I was like, "Okay, Kirk," I said, I don't think that it's a logical problem of God that you have. I think it's an emotional problem of God that you have, because I've been able to logically explain and answer the problems that you have, from origin of the universe to the various different religions. I said, but the problem that comes down to it is, I don't think that you want to change because there is a personal attachment to your belief system. And he actually paused, and he said, I think you're probably right. I don't want to be accountable to anybody. And that was, I mean, granted, that was probably after half a bottle of scotch. So, but uh, but what was interesting was you're right. It was an emotional change as or sticking point as opposed to an intellectual sticking point. But I think that what happens a lot of times is we get caught and we use the intellectual sticking points as excuses or as buffers so that we don't have to talk about the emotional side because people don't like to get emotional. And so I think that, yeah, that there's a lot of, when it comes to those discussions, people are more willing to throw out, a historical evidence of scripture as an argument, as opposed to a personal emotional situation.
Sure. Dr. James, that's why skepticism is essential because we know that beliefs are based on emotions. Yes, I agree, Robin. Unfortunately, so easy to say, so hard to do. I'm not sure we even know when the emotions are holding on to us and when we don't, right? So hard to be introspective to be able to know when we're being held by emotion. We disagree on so many things. Now, sometimes it might just be we haven't looked into it that much, right? Like, okay, well, I think this about that, but I've never looked into it that much, and I'm holding it strongly. But if I really looked into it, we might come to a more of agreement. But by golly, there are plenty of things we've looked into a lot and don't agree. I mean, theology is the ultimate example, right? Theologians don't agree on anything. Yeah, I mean,
Right.
if you find a view, you can find three, and if you find three, you can find four, and it seems like if you can find four, you can find five. So you say, are all those people just like not logical? Well, I mean, surely they all are. I mean that I think, and they're all trying to be skeptical and whatnot. I mean, if Robin, as an atheist, you obviously don't even care about the exercise for the most part because, um, you know, you disagree with the Bible. Just try to imagine that you think the Bible's true and you're trying to determine what it means. There's just not an agreement there. Um, so figuring out when our emotions are doing it or what is a big part of the problem. An example of something I changed my mind on that really sent me in a different direction is I got really, really deep into whether climate change was human caused or not.
Mm.
So I grew up, oh, it's all fake. It's definitely, it's a hoax. Climate change was a hoax. It was a tool for the Democrats to be able to control, to enact socialism or whatever, right? It was just a tool for Democrats to control. And so I looked into it, looked into it, and looked into it. And after a while, it was like, well, shoot, I mean, it's getting a little hard to understand why Switzerland is being controlled by the Democrats and not denying climate change. Somehow the Democrats got all the scientists in Europe and all the scientists in China and all the scientists all over the world. And somehow they're enacting socialism through climate change by convincing every scientist in the whole planet that climate change is a real thing and human cause, so on and so forth. So the thing about that happened about that, the reason that was important was because the people that told me that climate change was a hoax, I realized it's like, oh man, they're not right about stuff sometimes. Because we have to trust people in our life. When we go to our mechanic and they fix it, at some point you just got to trust them, right? And you can't really function in your life without some amount of trust. You go to a restaurant, you're going to trust they didn't poison the food, right? All that stuff, right? You're just trusting constantly. And when that trust was broken, that these people that I believed, now some of them they never looked into it, right? It's like it's not like they ever researched. When my dad told me that wind turbines produce less when they produce less energy than it takes to make them, he didn't look into it, right? He just heard it, who knows, on Rush Limbaugh or something. I don't know where he heard it. So anyway, that was an interesting time for me because that emotional flip, that flip, there was an emotional aspect in the sense that like, yeah, these people that I really trusted kind of about everything, oh, they could be wrong about stuff. And I'll let you respond to that, being a doctor, and then I'm gonna swap you out for Issa, and let's see what Issa has to chat
Sure.
about.
Yeah. Sounds
Yeah.
good. No, 100% agree. Being a Christian has, but also being more politically liberal, I think has been something that has been fascinating. I started, instead of just watching, one side news media, I started watching C-SPAN and just watching the actual debates and discussions between the two political sides. And what was fascinating was I found, man, there were times where I really agreed with Elizabeth Warren on her views, and when I read her biography, on her views on education and her views on this, and then Katie Porter and a number of other Democrats, I was like, you know what? Maybe these guys aren't all just evil. Like Christians are programmed to believe, and I get into a lot of conversations and debates with my Christian brothers and sisters who are staunch right wing. You can't believe in X, Y, and Z. I'm like, no, you can. But it's a matter of making that cognitive switch and going, yeah, I think some of the people, like you said, some of the people that I've held really dearly in my heart, they might have been wrong. They're super nice, great people, but maybe they're wrong about some of these things. That doesn't, I didn't throw out the baby with the bathwater in that capacity. I continue to stay focused on my faith, but I also challenge myself anytime I get a chance to. I loved reading the Quran and the Bhagavad Gita and the Dhammapada and the Rig Veda and studying different world religions, because it challenges me to understand, okay, do I believe, do I truly believe this, or is this something I was just raised in, which, I really wasn't raised in a Christian environment. So I came to that belief system because I did the study and was really being kind of a pill trying to disprove all of them. And then kind of came to the point where I was like, oh, well, okay. I knew something might have to be true, and that was my kind of beginning point. And so that's when I began looking into the different viewpoints. But yeah, anyways, love having the discussion. And
yeah, well, I do this every Thursday for the most part. I'd love to talk to you more about being a Christian and being a little bit more on the liberal side, because before I worked in IT, so just like 4 months ago, I was a full-time pastor, and I have a PhD in theology. I got it from a Southern Baptist seminary. So I've also sort of had, climate change being an example, some more liberal, whatever that means. I'm not sure why climate change is it feels weird to call that liberal, but liberal views, and had some interesting interactions, especially as a pastor. So it'd be really fun to explore how that goes for you and how you've been able to handle that and sort of navigate that. That'd be super great. Thanks so much for coming on, and I'm gonna take you off, and we'll bring on Issa. Thanks for joining.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Issa, what's up, my man?
Hey, I'm so sorry. It took me a bit of time to get here. Just a lot of stuff happening, but I'm doing great. It's wonderful. I loved the last section you were just talking about. It was great.
Oh, good. You've done some MDD debates.
Yes.
How do you feel about them? I know you've talked about it some, but in kind of the context of this chapter, the environment's tough, right? The environment for MDD is tough.
Yes. Well, it's weird. This is a strange thing, but I have kind of connected with a lot of the conservatives from the place. Like I would never thought that would be something that would actually ever happen. Like I get along with Andrew Wilson and Whitsitt. Like I don't have any issues with them. Like it's interesting is like all my kind of like progressive colleagues, they're the worst. And I'm like, there are people who have different opinions. Like that's the way I view it. I'm like, I don't feel the same. And it's a strange thing. I'm like, why do I not feel the same angst that they do? And I don't know. And I'm not sure. And I can't really figure out why that is, but like I can listen to very like conservative debaters and I'm like, okay, that's their opinion. That's kind of how
And when you say you connect with conservatives, you're talking about you've not debated Andrew Wilson. You're talking about having met him at a conference or something like that.
And we get along. Like I've gotten along with him. Whitsitt, strange. I don't know, but I get along with these guys.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously there's some layers here. Like, obviously you could meet me in person for 10 minutes and think I'm wonderful, and then find out that at home I'm, beating puppies or something, whatever, right? There's that. But also, there is a thing where I had this debate with, I think, Justin one time. I said, I bet you, who's the Speaker of the House? Mike Johnson, is that his name?
Yeah, I think so.
I said, I think there's a really good chance if he was your neighbor you would really like him and he would be a really good neighbor. His dogs wouldn't bark. He'd take care of his lawn. He would, if he saw your wallet sitting on the porch, he'd pick it up and hand it to you without looking through. Like he could, I wouldn't be surprised he could be a great neighbor. But I could see why you could super detest his policies, maybe on gay marriage or something like that, And so there's like this junk between them, because like you could say like, well, if you're against gay marriage, maybe Justin's not gay, I don't think, but you're gay, you could say this is like the worst thing, you're like just making my life so horrible. Like I think that can be true, and also can be true that he would be a great neighbor, meaning like other than his policy on that, he would be really nice.
This is going to sound bizarre, but I met Charlie Kirk in person. I went to one of his, or two of his Turning Point conferences because I was involved with student government. And I didn't really know much about it, but I guess I was connected to certain places. So I've been to the conference, like his conferences, and he was interviewing was he Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. And they were just like two normal people. I mean, yeah, they were conservative. They had their values, but I don't know. I guess I don't feel that type of angst. I'm just like, I feel it's more like that. I'm like, I connect with people as people, and I think people have different value systems. I'm more concerned about people who like actually. Like I just watched this movie and it was really disturbing. It was called Not Without My Daughter. You may have seen it. It's from the 90s. And it's based on a book from the 80s. It's about this woman who gets tricked into going to Iran, and basically her husband kind of traps her there and says that, kind of everything that they agreed upon kind of falls apart. And I mean, I know it's like a propaganda film, but I know there's reality to it also. And it kind of really disturbed me in a lot of ways. And I'm like, I'm far more disturbed with that than like people like who have, they have their opinions and maybe they are interested in, pushing them politically through democracy, but it's different when I feel like there's like a space where people have no voice and are completely silenced. I'm far more concerned about that kind of place than a place where it's like, okay, people have varying different opinions and, that's their opinion, that's their space, and you can agree or disagree. And if you don't agree, you just go a different place. That's kind of how I am. I'm like, cool, you have a different opinion. But it's different when people force the opinion and punish you if you don't have the same opinion. And I think that's kind of scary to me.
Yeah, well, the group dynamics of the debating we were talking about in the chapter, that's like arguing is almost more about social cohesion. It's good to get everybody to work together and be in the group. And there was probably some benefits to that in the sense that we do want to work together, and
Yes.
maybe arguing just makes us agree, not be right, which is rough, I got distracted here. The bearded, I worked in politics for years and worked with a Republican-leaning lobbyist firm and listened to them talk about climate change. It was wild. He didn't really believe it, but money kept him into it. When you say he didn't really believe it, do you mean that he believed in climate change and that it was human caused, and that he just kept working for the climate denial? Or could you clarify that? Because that'd be interesting to hear that. That it is tough, when you get, Issa, you've done a lot of, been a part of a lot of different groups, but it really is easy when you get to a part of a group. It's just life is a lot better and easier if you just go along. You just keep on rolling with it.
I hear you. So you asked about MDD.
Yeah.
It's actually one of the reasons why I decided to debate, particularly about the field of Islam, was that I saw a lot of representatives that were, I don't know how to put it, they were saying things that I just thought were objectively vile. Like they were so horrendous, so inhuman, so grotesque. Like that's what I saw. And I was like, we need a different voice to be represented in this space besides this voice. And that's why I said, let me step up and offer something different. And I think in some ways it was successful, in some ways maybe not, but it was just so horrific. The thing like child marriage, I was like, oh my gosh. Yes, people can produce that from the material. Yeah. There are other voices too, where you don't have to have that perspective. So that it just really bothered me because I'm like, And also like the idea that you would use political violence against your rivals. If you had power, you would abuse people. I was like, this is an issue. Like this is, it's like vile. It's a really grotesque thing. Like I don't care if you personally believe that you're the best person ever, but you do it in your own corner. That's cool. But if you're trying to impose your will on others, it's a little bit scary.
Yeah. Whoops, I just threw my mouse. Did I close the stream or oh no, I just minimized it. Holy cow. Chucking it all over the place here. The bearded doctor, the ecologist lobbyist, knew that climate change was caused by man, but the oil companies paid money, so he was willing to advocate for them and push their views. If that's true, that's just too bad. That is just too bad. You know, we don't talk about money, or I don't tend to talk about money too much. It is a huge factor, driving factor, why we believe things. You know, we stick with it because of the money sometimes. Which one do you think is a bigger deal? Is it the money or is it the social cohesion that we care more about? And sometimes the money creates the social cohesion, right? Like I want to take care of my family. They're super important to me. And money is a big part of being able to take care of my family. So I'm willing to keep my beliefs going in a certain direction. Or when I say keep my beliefs in a certain direction, it might mean like I'm not willing to consider something else that would make me quit my job because this job is important for me to be able to provide for the people that I care about. You know, like which is it? Is the money creating the social things that we care about so much, or is it which comes first? You know, we tend to think it's always the money first, and maybe it is, but maybe we need the money because of other priorities. Um,
I mean, I guess my opinion on that would be that money is basically a tool that we use in society. It's very important, and it is a part of cohesion. It's exactly what you said. And people want to live a certain quality of life, and money allows for that. So you might be willing to do certain things so you can have a different quality. Like that was the interesting thing. Like I was thinking about some of the debaters for flat Earth. I don't think some of these people actually care about flat Earth or believe in it, but they know how to argue it well, and they make you know a lot of money from it. Like, or they get clout, they get power, they get attention, and I'm like, I can see that. I can see why someone would do that, you know, and
yeah.
it makes sense to me, you know. And it's the same thing like with this ecologist, where the person's like, look, yeah, I don't necessarily agree with this, but I have a paycheck. I want to go to nice places. I want to go to Disney World or with my family, you know. I want to do like, and I mean that has more value.
Send my kids to college, right? Send my kids to
college.
You know, like things that are important that you should care about, that you should want to do or whatever, you know.
Exactly. And I don't feel any hate for that person. I'm like, we live in a tough world. A lot of people are like, I hate communism or I hate capitalism, whatever social world view that a person lives in. I'm like, but these are worldviews, these are world realities that exist. And so you have to survive these realities. Instead of getting angry and hating, you have to just be like, okay, this is just the reality. I got to make it through. You know, I got to pay the bills. You could say, I want a utopia. Well, you can want it all you want, but the bills are still there. You still got to pay for your house. Still got to take care of your family. Got to do all of that. So.
Well, one thing I've been thinking about, and we just got a couple of minutes, and I got to jump back to work.
Me too. I got to go to class.
So
I'm actually going to environmental law class. Funny enough.
Nice. I was thinking about. I think we've got quite a few more weeks on the Change My Mind, the book. But I thought about a book I might do next is something related to climate related or renewable energy or something like that. I'm really interested in that stuff. I don't know if other people would be interested enough in it, but I've thought about doing that and seeing if we could sort of change our minds about it. I've thought about, I don't know if you think this would be interesting, might only be interesting to me. There's this book that predicts what will happen in the future with energy, and it was written a number of years ago. And I thought about doing that book and seeing how the predictions have come out and what that makes us think about being able to predict the future, like how much we should care about it or think about it. I don't know. I find that interesting. I don't know if I have a good solid thoughts around it yet, but I've been thinking about doing something like that.
I think it's really great, and I think it's super cool to discuss the environment because the environment is really important. I want to tell. I have a story at some point on another Change My Mind about my experience in. I took a class called American Political System, and I looked at the 2016 Republican brief and the Democrat brief, and their view on climate change.
Mm-hmm.
It's magical.
Oh, we got to talk about that sometime. So another day when we have time,
We,
I'll love
and we
to
can
hear
pull up
about
the
it.
brief too. The
Yeah,
Republican brief is amazing. You read it,
Really?
yeah, you feel like you're in another world. It's
Really?
somewhere else. Yeah, I could even send it to you on Discord.
Yeah,
if you
send it to me. Maybe I'll, I do want to do this, finish this, Change My Mind, the book. I'm finding this really, really good. I'm really looking forward to the last chapter and its conclusion, but yeah, kind of thinking towards the future. But we better get going, Isa. Thanks everyone who came. Don't forget to like, subscribe. I'll see you guys on some future streams, hopefully, and for sure planning on doing next week. So adios, everybody.